You see, when you shift your way of thinking, it's not just for you, it's for the people around you as well. And when I speak about shifting your way of thinking, I'm largely speaking in this video about the way you frame things to yourself. So, for example, you can tell a lot about a person by their speech patterns. Someone who seems to have an up-down way of speaking, for example, I'm looking forward to going out tonight, man. Not so much how drunk I'm gonna get, how I'm gonna feel tomorrow. Or, oh, the weather's great, man. I'm gonna get sunburnt though, man. They have this up-down way of speaking. They're telling you and they're telling themselves that they can't have something good unless something negative follows after. That's their belief. And unknowingly, they're gonna work their way into that sequence of events for that to happen. Now, if you're someone who frames things in a negative way, if you're someone who sees themselves as a victim, and victims often don't like to admit that they're victims sometimes. I said often and sometimes, which are two different things, which is annoying me, but I'll run with it. But that was me at one point. And I'll tell you a story about when I was in my early 20s, yeah? Growing up, childhood to early 20s. If you wanted to define me, you could probably say awkward, withdrawn, depressed, isolated. As I got into my early 20s, things just spiraled worse and worse, and my beliefs was so polluted. I remember being on the phone to my dad, and my dad used to do what he could, to try and help me with my mental health, try and encourage me and so on. And I remember saying, Dad, what if the best I could be is a poor man or a homeless man? And my dad must have been thinking, what the... I remember him kind of being like, what? But that made sense to me at the time. It's a spiral that you can get into. That was the world as I was framing it. And there was one person I used to meet up with every now and again, and he was on his upward trajectory. He was changing his way of thinking because he was reading all these books and he was trying to implement what he'd learned. He was doing courses, he was trying to implement what he'd learned, trying to better himself, trying to be in better circles. And there was a point in time where we would meet up and he would try and reason with me, and I was so rigid in my thinking. My mind, I'm like, the world should be like this, but it's not like this. And I'm just going to be depressed about it and nothing's going to change. And he's like, you've got to take the world as it is or die. That's your only two options. And in the end, I moved away from that area and he politely just cut me off. And at the time I was offended because, again, naively, I didn't think anyone had to add value to anyone, or, I just thought you're just around people for the sake of it. I didn't get, I didn't really understand why anyway. But now it makes complete sense why he would need to move away. It's for his own sake. I was a liability to him. There's a famous film called A Bronx Tale. It's a great film. It's a classic. And in the film, one of the main characters is a gangster. And the gangster is placing bets. And he gets his young apprentice to place a bet for him. There's another guy in the film who, throughout the film, he's just unlucky. Bad things happen to him. Whenever he sets out to do something, it goes wrong. Whenever he places a bet, it goes wrong. So when the gangster's placing his bet through his young apprentice, the unlucky guy's like, hey, I want in on it. And the gangster snatches his money away and he's like, I don't even want your money touching my money. And the unlucky guy's like, wait, what did I do? What did I do? And the gangster's like, because you're a fucking jinx, that's why. And then they lock the unlucky guy away in some room somewhere while they continue the bet. And it's a funny scene. But let's read the 48 Laws of Power. And my eyes shift over here is because I'm literally reading it. It's from Law 10. Law 10 says, avoid the unhappy and unlucky. In other words, those who frame things in their mind that way. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious diseases. You may feel you are helping the drowning man, but you are only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it upon you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. Now that makes so much sense now. You see, when I went to Ethiopia for the first time, Ethiopia was the first time I felt real happiness. Yeah? And I used to meet up with this businessman. I didn't know he was a businessman. I met him for other purposes, but then when I found out and we started talking, I was trying to find out how did he make it all happen? And he said to me, the first thing you have to do is shift your way of thinking. All my success started up here. And I remember being so angry with him because I was tired of getting this half-hearted advice from people. You know, I'd met people who own shops and I would say, yo, how did you manage to achieve that? And they'd be like, I just worked hard. Come to find out they were gangsters in their country and they used to do a madness and then that's how they got the money. But they look at you in the face and tell you, yeah, you mop floors long enough. And I was tired of that. But what he said was so right. And when I look back on it now, he really did live like that because another thing that he said to me was, I was looking at his bookshelf and I noticed he had certain types of books in there. And he's like, I don't care what I read, but everything I must read must be wisdom. I don't read nothing for no reason. So he was shaping the way he thinks to the type of life he wanted to live. And it kind of reminds me of this saying. You see, if you want to get out of that thinking like a victim, thinking like the world is against you, instead of thinking like that, live as though the universe conspires in your favor. And that's taken from a line that's in The Alchemist. In the book The Alchemist, it says something along the lines of, when you want something, the universe conspires in order for you to achieve it. You've got to frame things to yourself in a manner such as that. If you know me, you know I love the Avatar. There's a part in, I think it's Legend of Korra, where Uncle Arrow says, if you look for the light, you can often find it. But if you're looking for darkness, that's all you'll ever see.